into the future where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
It really shouldn't make that much of a freaking difference. It really shouldn't be that big of a deal. And when you see the posts on Facebook, you're like, oh, please. Oh, daylight savings time really messed me up. But the bottom line is daylight savings time really messes a lot of people up. I think I'm one of them, for sure. And the time change yesterday, I got to tell you, really threw me for a loop. I thought I would be fine. I thought there would be no big deal with it. I'm sleep deprived chronically most of the time. I have been since I was like 8 years old, but I very nearly called in sick the other day just because I couldn't keep my eyes open. And I mean, admittedly, I only had the 3 hours of sleep, but I think part of the reason I only had the 3 hours of sleep was the daylight savings time. Like 3, definitely not enough. 4, passable, I think. And it really is an interesting situation that America finds itself in, where we lose billions of dollars of productivity because of daylight savings time, this archaic tradition that, if you ask me, needs to go the hell away. How do you feel about this, Travis?
I don't get enough sleep, at least like quality, steady sleep on a regular basis, that I don't really think that it bothers me. I'm actually pretty surprised that it bothered you, because half the time I talk to you, it'll be 4 a.m. in Houston and you're still awake, and you're probably, and I'm trying to think, I'll go to bed and I'll get up around 8 or 9 and send you a text message and you'll reply. And I'm like, oh man, there's a good chance that I possibly woke him up. Either that or he just doesn't sleep, I guess, about as much as I do. And you're constantly awake. I'm amazed at how little sleep you get.
I mean, I have like a 16-hour work day, sometimes more. Like, it's a long-ass day. And then I think the thing that really threw me for a loop was the rest of the world started, and I couldn't do anything about it yesterday morning. Meaning, landscaper folks were like leaf blowing and lawn mowing. And Millhouse was like, oh, my sworn enemies, I must bark ferociously so they don't come anywhere near the home. And then there was the whole aspect of like, I have really bad allergies, and when they cut the grass, it raises that up. And it was just, it became this whole thing where I'm going to sound like a kid who has a retainer and an inhaler that got bullied in school, but like the histamine level went up and there was just no going back to sleep. And besides, the rest of the world was already starting to call me, and it just, yeah, no good. So I'll get 4 hours of sleep a night. Sometimes, like on a good night, I can get anywhere between 4 and 6. And on the weekends, I'll just sleep until I get up. And, you know, sometimes that's a million hours. Sometimes that's no hours. But the bottom line is, like, we are a chronically sleep deprived country. And the country's issue with sleep deprivation has been shown, and who knows where they get this number from, but it's a large enough number to where even if it is off by a decimal point or two, you got to take it seriously. The country's issue with sleep deprivation has been shown to cost the economy $411 billion in productivity losses. $411 billion with a B.
Wow.
And a big part of the reason why I think we're all chronically underslept as a nation is because businesses are trying to get more out of us. Like, get back on that treadmill, work, produce, alphabetize those insurance claims forms or whatever the hell it is you're doing. And, you know, get out there and produce. You can't produce enough? Get on some drugs. Now, produce more now that you're all hopped up on God knows what. And it might explain why that guy in front of you keeps drifting in and out of his lane, assuming he's not drunk or texting. Well, this survey finds that 44% of working Americans are, quote unquote, chronically underslept because of their job. Only 13% say they never miss out on sleep because of work. And I guarantee you, none of those people work in radio or on tugboats.
No, it's true. It's so true. And it's funny because I'm trying to think, when we lost the hour, it was crew change night on the tugboat. And so I got off, I completely didn't even realize it, got off the boat. And of course, all the like magic devices automatically change their time. So you don't really think about it. Mm-hmm. But the clock in my car had not. And so I was like operating under this pretend time. And I was walking back to my sailboat and I thought I had like obviously another hour. And this dude's like, yep, I gotta go. Gotta be at work at noon. I was like, you got plenty of time. He's like, it's already 11. I'm like, It's not 11. Oh, yeah, it was 11. It was 11 in the morning. I'm like, wow, this apparently it messed up. I guess it messed with me more than it did, or at least more than I thought it did.
I have a similar situation with my automobile's clock. This time last year, it was kind of a new car, and I didn't know where that button was to change it, and I couldn't be bothered to find it. And then I just wound up leaving it, and then I left it for so long, I'm like, I'm not going to bother changing it. So it's been out of whack for the entirety of daylight savings time, and now it's normal. And the fact that it's normal as opposed to an hour off, that's kind of messed me up.
Let's start the show.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
You know, I'm trying to figure out at what point it became a badge of honor to be underslept. Like, here's the thing. If you talk to the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, they're all going to tell you that they sleep almost not at all. And if there's one of them in there that gets a full 8 to 10 hours of deep restful sleep every single night, there's no way they are admitting that around a bunch of other CEOs or around any. Like, if you go to a job interview and you're sort of some sort of alpha dog type of domineering type of person that is used to moving in the shark infested kill or be killed waters of high stakes business, you say, I sleep 4 hours a night. That's all I need. Then I get up and I'm super productive in the first part of the day. Rah! Like, at what point did it become a wuss move to admit that you sleep? It's weird. You know, we're like, it's this strange alpha badge of honor to only sleep 4 hours a night. And I just think it's garbage. It's a myth that's been perpetuated for so long. And I say this as somebody who kind of exists in similar, not high stakes business, shark infested waters in that way. But, you know, there's a lot to be done in radio. There really is. And you just wind up not sleeping. And the fact that you can operate on not a lot of sleep is definitely something that's going to help you get ahead in this game. But I just don't think it's anything to be proud of anymore. I think it shows a much, like, if someone tells me they get 8 hours of sleep a night, I'm like, wow, you must be fantastic at time management. Bravo. Hats off to you. You're better than me.
Right.
I've had horrible insomnia my entire life since I was like in the 8th grade, or since I was about 8 years old even. I didn't get a normal night of sleep. I don't know what it is. I just stayed up. My circadian rhythm is off. I'm a night person, not a morning person. I call it whatever the hell you want, but I've been sleep deprived and insomniac, whatever you want to refer to it as, for a very long time, and it's absolutely no joke. Then I got a real grown-up adult bed. I got one of those Tempur-Pedic jobbies, and that made all the difference in the world in terms of my ability to get to sleep. So I can lie down on the pillow and be knocked out pretty quickly. It's just getting to a position where I can be in bed and sleep and not have to like work in bed. You know, it's just... You know what's weird? I found myself thinking to myself over the last couple of years on more occasion than one.
What's that?
I used to hear these stories. Of jazz musicians and how they would wind up drug addicts. And it was because of the demands of their jobs. Like, you hear all these stories of these session musicians. Perfect example, Steve Gadd. Steve Gadd was a first call session musician drummer. He played on all these albums by Paul Simon and Steely Dan in the 70s. He was like the guy. He was the guy that came up with the iconic drum part to 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. He was the first call individual that when you needed a track and you needed a drummer on that track, you called this guy and it was going to cost you a pretty penny, but he'd be there for you and he would get the job done. And he very well documented his struggles with cocaine. And he said the reason he did cocaine was not because he was partying, is because he'd have a session at 8 a.m. where he'd show up, set up his drums, play drums for a day, and then go to another session and then maybe another session. And then he'd have a nightclub gig. And he, you know, when you're self-employed and you're a musician and you're offered work, you try not to say no to it because you don't know when that work is going to run out. So he wound up burning the candle at both ends. And when I was a kid, when I was playing a lot of jazz, I actually ran into some old jazz cats, Daddy-O, like these older sort of, session musicians that I would play with. Like, I started playing drums when I was 4 years old. And by the time I was like 15 or so, I was playing in hotels and stuff like that, and weddings and function bands. And it was a great old time. But all these guys that I was working with were much older. And more than one of them told me stories of how they got hooked on cocaine and heroin. They would do the cocaine to stay awake because they had 3-4 sessions in the morning, and then they had a couple of club gigs at night, and then it would start all over again at 8 in the morning. And you know what works great when you can't sleep? Cocaine. Like, that'll make you seem like a normal person. But then you get a day off and, you're all hopped up on the cocaine. So because of all the cocaina going through your system, you start taking sleeping pills, and the sleeping pills aren't doing it. And I remember this one bass player said the way he got hooked on heroin was he'd been awake on cocaine for a while, and he was spending all his money on sleeping pills, and a buddy of his went, just do one hit of smack, and there you go. And just like that, because of the workload, he became addicted to cocaine and heroin.
My God.
And, spent years getting out of that ridiculously abusive, horrible cycle. And it was really nothing more than a function of work. It wasn't because he was partying, it was because he was trying to get the work done. And I would never dream of touching any sort of amphetamine to keep me going at work. I mean, other than the 16 or so cups of coffee I drink a day, so I don't know how that figures in. Like, I don't know what the coffee to crystal meth equation is, but I would never dream of touching drugs to keep going. But there's times where I'm going through my day going, I wish I didn't have to sleep. I wish I didn't have to get 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 hours of sleep, because then I could just get it all done and I wouldn't have to stress about it. And I go, oh, this is how people get hooked on cocaine. This is how people wind up drug addicted, because they're trying to keep up with the demands of their jobs. It's crazy. And we'll get into this more. It's a chronic problem. But if you're one of those people that, like I said, wears it as a badge of honor that you don't sleep very much, it's time to abandon that, because it's harming us as a country to the tune of $511 billion of lost productivity.
That's crazy.
The proof is in the pudding, by the way. Daylight savings time as a nation really does affect us. It started on Sunday, and since daylight savings time kicked in, there's been an increase in heart attacks. There's more car crashes. You waste entirely more time on the interwebs, and your stress levels go through the roof. Why do all these things happen? It's an interesting one, and it's a fine argument for doing the hell away with the whole concept of daylight savings time, which we'll get into next.
None higher, suckers in the age, call me sire. Think you're gonna be the one to turn me down and guess again? No. Whoa. Money making, skills on the mic, can be paid every day. And for part of the battle, just bow down, better act like you know. Whoa.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on.
So daylight savings time is in full effect. We lost an hour of sleep over the weekend. And if that wasn't bad enough, here are the other ways that it could be affecting you. First and foremost, could be fatal. There's an increase in heart attacks on the Monday following daylight savings time kicking in. One study found that on Mondays after the time springs forward, hospitals see a 25% increase in heart attacks. Maybe this is part of what they're factoring in when they say that we lose $511 billion to lost productivity every single year from sleep deprivation. There's also more car crashes on average. There's an 8% increase in traffic accidents on the days after we lose an hour of sleep. And that doesn't surprise me. Like, I was barely functioning yesterday. I'm not technically functioning today, but like, I am a guy who, I don't know. I think in the coming up on 15 years that I've done radio, I think I've taken 2 sick days, and I almost did it yesterday where I was just like, I literally can't keep my eyes open. I did the show with you, Travis, and then I was just like, I'm out. I got to tap out because I've been going to bed at like 4 and 5 in the morning, but like 5 in the morning was really 6 in the morning. And it was just, it was too much or too little. So I absolutely understand how and why this happens. You're also going to waste more time on the internet after daylight savings time. A study found that on the Monday after the shift to daylight savings time, employees spend more time procrastinating and wasting time on the internet at work. And finally, your stress levels can shoot through the roof. In this study, people's cortisol levels rose when the sunrise time was pushed back an hour. On average, there was a 5% increase in stress levels. And that might not sound like much, but it could have serious effects depending on your job. For instance, a group of psychologists found that judges... Yeah, this could affect our legal process. A group of psychologists found that judges were more likely to give harsher sentences after losing an hour of sleep. And by the way, doesn't that just pump you full of confidence when it comes to our criminal justice system? Like, if they're cranky because they got an hour less sleep, you could end up going to prison as opposed to getting a slap on the wrist for whatever moving violation you pulled in your car. So, yeah, hopefully you're not going to court anytime real soon, because cranky judges means increased prison sentences. So there you go. Where are they starting to do away with this, Travis?
So there's a bunch of states that don't actually do daylight savings time. Hawaii, Alaska, Arizona doesn't do it. I think Indiana may have done away with it. But the interesting thing this is the first time this has happened. Florida is trying to do away with daylight savings time, and they actually passed the law.
A lot of people listen to this show in Florida. We're on in Orlando and in Palm Beach, both.
Yes,
on both real radio stations. So, all right, Florida, what you got for us? What's happening in Florida, Travis?
Well, they're ingenious about it, except for the fact that it's illegal what they're trying to do. But they understand that. They want to keep daylight savings time. They don't want to be on standard time at all, because if you think about it, the farther east you are, you deal with the whole issue. Yeah, you deal with the whole issue of less sunlight. So they want to stay on daylight savings time. The problem is that there is literally an act of Congress that defines the time zones, and the act of Congress allows states to be exempt from daylight savings time. However, it does not allow them to stay on daylight savings time. So they did pass a law, but the law specifically says if Congress rewrites the law and says that we're allowed to, then we will stay on daylight savings time.
So I don't know if it's your people, and for those that don't know Travis Go Lightly all that well, Travis, it's Cherokee Indian, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's your tribe, but I know that there's certain reservations that have different daylight savings times practices as well. So you could be on the reservation and it could be a completely different time to off the reservation, if that makes sense.
How awesome would that be to be a kid and like your parents tell you have to be home at 9 or whatever? But you don't want to come home yet, so you just go off the reservation where it's actually an hour earlier. And your parents call and they're like, "Where are you at?" And you're like, "I'm hanging out at a friend's house." Why? They're like, "I told you to be home at 9. You're like, "I'm looking at my watch. It's only 8.
They did away with it in most of Europe, and they kept it in England, and the people in England are bummed the hell out about it. Like my friends, I talked to them about it, like it's so depressing, as if it wasn't depressing enough living under this constant and never-ending gray drizzle. You gotta lose hours of daylight. Like when I was a kid, that was the first thing I remember moving to England. It'd be like 3:30 in the afternoon. It was dark. And during the summertime, this all has to do with where you are in relation to the equator, but during the summertime, it would stay light until 9:30, 10 o'clock. I had, teenage friends that would come over from America being like, we need the cover of darkness to indulge in underage teenage shenanigans. Does it ever get dark around here? I'm like, no, not really. You're going to be waiting for a long time. Just get comfy doing this stuff out in the open the way I have. But yeah, England wants to do away with it, and the rest of Europe has. And there's so many of my English buddies are just like, this is ridiculous, mate. It's freaking stupid is what it is. According to a new survey, 44% of working Americans are chronically underslept because of their jobs. Would you say you're underslept because of your job? I mean, besides being a super producer of the radio variety, you also happen to be an able seaman. You work on a tugboat, and you are always up at weird hours tugging boats, doing things, putting lines out. What's the technical term?
What the problem is, so the issue for me is, and don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining at all. I love my job. I love the company that I work for. I love the union. It's great. But the issue is, because I'm unlicensed. I'm not an officer yet. I'm not a mate or a master or a chief engineer. So I'm unlicensed. I'm the low guy on the totem pole, and there's only one AB on the boat. So the issue is, the mate and the master, they stand watches. So they'll have an on watch and an off watch. And I think it's like 5 and 7. So they'll work 5 hours, have 7 hours off, and then work 7 hours and have 5 hours off. So they stand a watch. They, in theory,
that's already unbelievably complicated.
I know, right? I know. But so they have an actual rest period. However, for the low guys on the totem pole, if the boat is working, then you're up and working. So if we get called, to put a ship on the dock at 3 a.m, then the AB or the AB is going to be up to take to drop the line so that we can actually go to the ship, and then you can go lay back down. But then as soon as you get to the ship, the AB has to go outside and put a line up on the ship to be able to pull them around. And then when you get done moving them and they're on the ship, you got to go out and take the line in, and then you go back to your bed, and you're not just about the time that you start to fall asleep. You got to go back out and tie the boat up. So it's one of those things. It's like,
what's the longest amount of time that you tend to sleep? Like at a stretch, if you're going to sleep, how long do you get?
Sometimes, so between like work hours of like 8 and 5, we work on the boat. We try and, make sure that the boat is upkept and stuff like that. Work on painting, chipping, stuff like that. Keep the boat looking nice. After 5, if the boat's not running, you could go to sleep. I'm trying to think. Sometimes the gods smile upon us and it's a fog night and we get fogged in. And so if there's fog, the ship channel closes. So generally you're not going to be working. So sometimes you can actually get a full 8 hours, 9 hours of sleep if it's foggy. So we love fog nights. But yeah, I mean, other than that, you may get up for 2 or 3 jobs, maybe 4 jobs. Sometimes we've worked all night and it's just exhausting. It's just terrible. And you get a makeup rest period after, like somebody else, the engineer will go out and handle lines for you or something. But you still hear, the horn blow for the engineer to go out, and the boat's still moving around and still pushing on ships and stuff. So is it good sleep? No, I wouldn't say that. It's funny because when you and I were like young, wide-eyed bucks starting out in radio, like you would routinely just have a cot in the studio and just spend the night there and catnap here and there. Meanwhile, like I was just saying yes to everything I could. I didn't have a real job. So anytime I could get work, whether it was on Sirius XM or whether it was one of the iHeart stations or any of the above, I would just say yes. And fortunately, I got enough work to where I worked. First 5 years I was in radio, I worked 365 days of the year, including New Year's, Christmas, all these shifts that nobody else wanted to work. So there was me going, yeah, I'll do it. No problem. Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to get somewhere in life. And I think it was the first 5 years before I got a single day off. And then it was pretty sporadic after that. And that was fine, when you're in your early 20s. Right.
By the time I hit 30, I was expecting a change. That change is yet to come. Like, it's more regimented. I'm salaried. I'm not wondering where my next nickel is coming from, but the workload hasn't slowed down even a little bit. Younger workers are more likely to be underslept than anyone. 57% of 18 to 34-year-olds say that they lose sleep because of work. That's compared to half of people between 35 and 54, and just 29% of workers older than that. Guys are slightly more likely to lie awake in bed stressing about work-related stuff. Half of men do it compared to like 40% of women. Now, where do you suppose the most stressful cities to work are that are going to keep you awake at night?
I'm betting somewhere. I mean, is it hands down? It has to be New York City's number one.
Well, the cities that are the most sleep deprived because of work, New York is in there, but number one on the list is Miami.
Really?
Then, weirdly enough, Nashville, Tennessee. Okay. I don't know. I've never lived in Nashville. I don't.
Oh, hang on. Are these party cities? Is that what it is?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know the extent of it. But I do know that, from being a musician living in New York City before I was in radio, you could walk into a session at 2, 3 in the morning. Like there's times there's people trying to get records done and you get cheaper studio time in the middle of the night. So it's like, hey, we need you to do some vocals on this, or we need you to play keyboard or guitar or drums on this. Can you come to the studio? Sure. What time? 1 a.m. Not a problem. I'll be there. So I wonder if that has something to do with it. Nashville being sort of like a 24-hour music town. Maybe the recording studios stay open later, and because of that, the other businesses, sort of like the late night food emporiums, to feed hungry country musicians delicious snacks, stay open late. And then there's New York, which is truly the city that never sleeps. Chicago, similar vibe. And San Francisco. These are the cities where people are the most sleep deprived because of work stress. The cities where it's least common are DC. That's surprising. I would have thought everyone was stressing there. I guess politicians are just like, another day of bilking the taxpayer. Honk shoe. Boy, it sure does feel great sleeping on this pillow made entirely of other people's hard-earned money. Pittsburgh, San Diego. I spent a good chunk of my year in San Diego, and I got to tell you, possibly one of the most frustrating things about San Diego is that if you want to eat somewhere after 9 o'clock, you are out of luck. People go to bed. I think it's because San Diego is one of those cities that's so indescribably beautiful that people want to be up with the sun. So, like, everybody's up at 5 a.m., walking, biking, singing with the birds, whatever the hell it is they do at 5 a.m. when they're all happy and fulfilled as their feet hit the floor. I'm a little bitter about people like that.
Yeah, you are. Oh, my God.
So maybe that's why people go to bed early in San Diego. And then, DC, I guess people are chilled out because you're sleeping on giant piles of other people's money. Pittsburgh, I guess... I don't know enough about Pittsburgh to comment on why it would be an easygoing lifestyle there where you weren't kept awake by work stresses. I guess if you have sort of like if you have one of those jobs, let's say you do work in steel, like if you have a factory job or, perhaps a mining job or something of that nature, and your shift is from this time to this time, you don't bring your work home with you. Like for me, programming a radio station, I'm constantly freaking out, constantly checking, like, are we on time? Did the board op forget to do this? Did this commercial drop? Did this, world premiere of this new song by whatever the hell band play the way it was supposed to play? Like, you never get to kind of switch work off. And if you have sort of maybe a factory or a steel job, I mean, Pittsburgh, maybe that's what plays into it. Then Cleveland, Minneapolis, we've been seeing over the last couple of days has all sorts of things going for it. Like, not only is it an under-stressed city by comparison to all these other places, but weren't we reading the other day that it was the place where women experienced the greatest equality in the workplace?
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
What is going on in freezing Coldville? The top 5 work-related reasons we miss out on sleep are working too many hours, obsessing over a work-related issue, problems with a coworker, worrying that you might get fired, and having a nightmare of a boss, or having a nightmare about your boss, either or, potato.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio. 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
So we've established that no one's sleeping, that we're even more messed up because of daylight savings time, that we're stressed about our jobs and that's keeping us awake at night, and that we're chronically underslept, and that damages the economy to the tune of $511 billion per year in America. So what do we do to get to sleep? I actually know a lot about this stuff. Like, my problem is not so much going to sleep, it's having the time to go to sleep, like the number of hours in which to sleep. That's what evades me. I managed to get my insomnia under control by sort of like going to a sleep hygiene doctor and figuring that out, and then getting a really, really good bed. The good bed made all the difference. Like, I got to tell you, up until a few years ago, my bed was either a futon or a tour bus. Oh man. By the way, I've never slept better than when I was on tour buses. Like, that was a big adjustment coming off the road. If I wasn't in a vehicle that was in motion, I wasn't getting to sleep. Something about that made it so much easier. But there's all these sort of sleep hygiene things that you have to do, and getting a real grown-up bed as opposed to a futon or something that had fallen off the back of a truck that you got at a ding and dent sale. I got to tell you, there's a reason why the expensive ones are more expensive. And I'm not saying you got to buy the one that, you know, is in the White House or anything like that. But I found that there is a difference between the, you know, $1,000 mattress and the $100 mattress. Like, it makes a big freaking difference. But if you have trouble, or if you're having trouble adjusting to daylight savings, you might want to start trying to prepare your body or get your body to catch up with daylight savings. These two sleep experts recently came up with a 6-step routine. It takes about 30 minutes, and that's how long they say you need to relax and mentally prepare for bed. By the way, the thing that worked the best for me was setting a time to get up, and that was it. There were no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because ultimately it would catch up with you, even if you only slept 2 hours. And I had really, really bad sleep problems. So getting a 2-hour night of sleep was not unusual for me. But eventually you do enough of those in a row, 8 o'clock rolls around and you're like, oh, it's bedtime. And it works. But sticking to a getting up time that made a huge difference. But this is what we're supposed to do. Tell me if you do any of these, Travis. 30 minutes before bed, make a to-do list for the next day. Just jot stuff down so you don't lie in bed thinking about it. It's a way of kind of clearing your mind.
I don't. No, I don't. And you know what? I constantly lay in bed thinking about what I have to do the next day.
To me, it seems a little counterintuitive, but I have to imagine there's a reason why it works. Like, if you write it all down, you can kind of set it aside as opposed to going through it in your mind. That way you've sort of like mentally collated what's going on in the next 24 hours and you don't have to stress about it as you're falling asleep. So maybe try writing it down. A buddy of mine that was big into AA, he was an alcoholic, and I'm not going to tell his name, so I won't blow the anonymous part of Alcoholics Anonymous. But one of the things he told me to do, he was like, man, I write a to-do list every single day. The night before I go to bed, I write a to-do list. And as I do that stuff, everything from, you know, brushing my teeth to my job to getting gas for the car to all, like, I check it off, and it does wonders for my self-esteem, and it really helps keep me in order. You should try it. And I wasn't an alcoholic, but I found it to be very useful as an application for life. It's part of the 12-step program that I think probably works for a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. 25 minutes before bed, stop using all electronics. That means your phone, your computer, your TV. The blue light they give off tricks your body into staying awake because your brain thinks it's daylight. Just that little blue light at the edge of your phone that can mess up everything, apparently. Go figure. 20 minutes before bed, brush your teeth. It's also the best time to take off your makeup, Travis, and wash your face.
I do that portion. I usually do it after I brush my teeth.
Doing it right before bed can wake you up. Like, the cold water on your face can wake you up, so you don't want to do that right before you hop into bed. Now, 15 minutes before bed, take a quick shower. Make sure it's a hot shower. Why it has to be hot, I'm not entirely sure, but that sort of makes sense. Because when you get out of a hot shower,
it does make you tired.
Yeah, there's something about it that's pretty relaxing. 10 minutes before bed, use the bathroom. Go to the little boys or girls room. A recent study found that 42% of people don't get enough sleep because they have to get up and go in the middle of the night. Are you ever, at what age, Travis, are we supposed to get up in the middle of the night to pee? Like, that hasn't happened to me yet. I managed to hold it the whole night through.
Hang on, what?
Old guys, like, they talk about how they have to get up in the middle of the night to pee.
You don't get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom?
No.
Oh my God. I do probably 2 to 3 times a night.
Is it weird to feel superior about my bladder control?
I was going to say.
Because right now, I'm getting a weird sense of pride over the fact that I sleep through the night. In fact, I'll tell you something. If I've got an early meeting, something that I'm worried I'm going to sleep through,
yeah,
I'll drink a big glass of water before bedtime, knowing that will help me wake up in the morning because I'll need to use the little boys' room.
I hate you.
That's a thing.
God, I hate you. You know, it's I have an inferior bladder. I do. I know I do.
Apparently you do.
Yeah. And I'm not even joking. Like, I will wake up in the middle of the night 2 or 3 times. Like, not only I kind of have to go, but like it's burning. I really need to go because I have to go so bad it's burning.
No kidding.
Not because I have an STD or an STI. I don't. Okay. But I do have to pee so bad that it burns.
That's really interesting. I'm fiercely competitive in every way that it's possible to be competitive. And right now I'm getting kind of like a weird competitor's thrill over the fact that I can sleep through the night without having to get out to pee. You know, I win bedroom bladders.
Well, you know what? I win the competition of who can pee the most during the night. So how's it feel to be a loser?
That's not your choice.
I hate you.
I'm doing something that you want to do, sleeping through the night with a full bladder of water. But I do like that's honestly like I'm Mr. Snooze Alarm, and that's a trick I play on myself if I know I'm going to like have an early meeting that I'm worried I'm going to sleep through, is I drink a big glass of water before going to bed. Then 5 minutes before bed, you shouldn't do that, by the way, you shouldn't do that. But 5 minutes before bed, stop talking. If you go to bed with someone, quit talking to them. Let your brain start to wind down. Then once you get into bed, your body should be ready to fall asleep. And there's some important stuff that I learned from the sleep hygiene doctor that I used to see about the bedroom and what it's for and what you should and should not have in it. I break all of the rules, but when I was having really big problems sleeping, there were some things that I banished from the bedroom, and it made a big, big difference. What are they? We'll get into it next. Hang tight.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So one last thought that I'll leave you with. We discussed the fact that 30 minutes before bed, you make a to-do list for the next day. That means you won't stress about it as you're tossing and turning trying to get to sleep. You will have made your list. You will have put it to the side. 25 minutes before bed, stop using all your electronics, including your phone, computer, TV, all the above. 20 minutes before bed, brush your teeth, wash your face. 15 minutes before bed, take a quick shower, make sure it's hot. 10 minutes before bedtime, use the little boys or girls room. And finally, 5 minutes before bed, stop talking. If you're with someone, let your brain start to wind down, quit talking to them. And then once you get into bed, your body should be ready to fall asleep. The other thing that they taught me at the sleep hygiene place that I went to was that under no circumstances should you have anything other than a bed really in your bedroom. No television, no computer, no phone, no any of this sort of stuff. And that's a really hard thing to do. And I break all those rules now. I've got a TV. I work in bed an awful lot, which is a horrible, horrible thing to do. But it's one of those things where it's just, I'm comfortable. It helps me. It does keep me awake, but then it also helps me wind down. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like scheduling a radio station, if you've never done it before, is a certain amount of, it's almost like solving a puzzle in a way. It's like figuring out a jigsaw puzzle, and that can kind of sort of distract you and help. Anyways, it's something my doctor would absolutely have a problem with. But you're not supposed to have a television set in your room. You're not supposed to have a computer. You're not supposed to have a phone. Your bedroom is supposed to be for 2 things and 2 things only: sleep and bow chicka wow wow, getting busy. And that is it. And if you wake up in the middle of the night and, you know, you're thinking of reading, then you're supposed to leave your bedroom, go sit down on a chair in the living room, read for 15 minutes, then go back to bed. But you shouldn't be reading in bed, shouldn't be on your computer, shouldn't be on your phone, shouldn't be doing anything other than sleeping and making the beast with 2 backs. So there you go.
So let me ask you this, during nighttime when it's actually time to go to bed, where does your phone live? Like, does it live on the little nightstand? Oh,
it's horrible. It lives on my nightstand, and also I got one of those new wireless charger things. So but I've got it sort of facing up, so my phone looks at me. Like, And the first thing I do, and this is a different kind of job. Like when you're programming radio stations, like you're constantly on alert thinking that you're going to get a call from the board op or that something screwed up or that, some numbskull forgot to press a button and you lost thousands of dollars in advertising money on their watch or something like that. So
that's what I was going to ask you. So what are your sound settings?
I go to bed so that my phone can ring.
Okay. Yeah.
Because in an emergency, someone has to be able to reach me. So I turn the ringer on and I turn the text alert on.
Oh, wow. So you're getting text messages too.
Yes, Travis. Sometimes I get early morning text messages from friends.
Sorry about that.
It's totally okay. But then, like, occasionally there's these, like, overzealous record reps, that I live the Southern California lifestyle. Like, it's 7:30 in the morning. I think I'll give my pal AD a call, and it's just, oh, man, it's really obnoxious. Like, how do you feel about the new Hoobastank record? Not as good as I did before this phone call. Click, bye. It's like there's these weird people that are up with the roosters that assume that you're going to do the same thing. And I've always hated those people.
Oh, God, I know. Really I know. Weird. Well, I have you beat, though. Not in a good way. You win this one again. I have you beat. I will actually leave the phone in bed with me. Not even on the nightstand. I will literally, because I usually sleep on my stomach, I will grab the pillow and have the pillow I'll have my hands underneath the pillow, underneath the front, and sit there and play on the phone until I fall asleep.
Do you read on your phone? What do you do?
I usually, all joking aside, I usually look for news articles that we're going to talk about on the show. That's usually, I won't read them intensely in the bed, but if the story, I'll read a paragraph or two, and if the story looks interesting, then I'll save the story, and the next day I'll get up and read the story and see if it's any good or not. But I'm the worst. Either that or I'll sit there and look on stupid websites like Reddit or something, or sit there and watch, stupid videos that I shouldn't be watching at 3 a.m. when I should be asleep. And I know that I should be asleep. And I'm like, dude, put the phone down. And I'll put the phone down, and then I'll be like, oh, I need to add something to the grocery list. And I'll take my phone out, and then I'm back on the websites. It's terrible.
It's interesting. It's interesting how stuff like that sucks you in. I avoid like the plague social media in bed. I just don't. When I'm in bed, if I'm going to look at my phone, I'd better be reading something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless it's sort of work related, but it's just, if I'm in bed and I'm just looking for something to help me zone out, I have my e-reader app on my phone. It took me a long time to get into that. There's all these people that swear by books, and I understand that because I just couldn't get used to the idea of reading on a tablet or a phone. People say they need to hold the book in their hand, they need to feel the pages turn. I get that it's a whole sort of sensory type thing, and I used to feel that way until one flight where I was so bored. There was no in-flight Wi-Fi, there was no anything. There was no movie, there was no Wi-Fi. Literally all I could do was look at my phone, and there was no phone service, obviously. So I was like, oh, let me just read. I can't read on my phone. I think it's so weird to read a book on your phone. But then I did it. And from there on in, I've just been a guy that reads books on his phone. I don't even need a tablet anymore. I used to feel like I needed a tablet so I could hold it in two hands and it would feel vaguely book-like. Does that make sense? I know it sounds a little weird, but
no, it makes sense.
It was a stretch to read on a tablet, but I absolutely couldn't do it on a phone. What are you going to do? Hold a phone in one hand and call that reading a book? That's not reading a book. Your English teacher would be ashamed. Mr. Daniels from AP English would have a problem with this, my friend. Yes, he would. That's what I was telling myself. And then eventually I just got so bored. I'm like, oh, F this. I've got 5 different P.G. Wodehouse books on my phone. And then all of a sudden, as soon as I managed to get over it, I love it. I love it because you go on vacation or you take a little trip or you go, wherever the hell it is you're going, you're traveling. You don't have to carry 5 freaking hardcover books with you or, softback. The idea of having a library on your phone is great. And by the way, a lot of the books that I like are on the public domain because I guess they're old enough. Once you hit a certain number of years since it's been published, they're public domain. So the vast majority of the books that I like to read, like the P.G. Wodehouse books, they're all free. You can get as many of them as you want in the public domain, and it's awesome.
It's funny because my friend Tessa, she was really excited because she was about to go get a library card. She's a reader, and she was very, very interested in having a library card so she could check out books. And I brought you up. I said, my friend AD, he likes to read. I said, but he reads on his phone. And she went, I said, yes, I know. And she's like, oh my God, I have to feel the book. I said, no, I know. I said, and I know most readers are like that.
Yeah, no, it's very much a thing that I've heard over and over again. And it seems so wildly pretentious. Like I used to say it and feel ashamed of myself. No, I need to feel the pages turn. But it's just... It sounds pretentious, but I totally get it because the idea of reading on my phone was just impossible. But, once I cross that bridge, I'm never coming back. It's like the idea of like you have this carefully, meticulously curated selection of compact discs and cassette tapes, and you've got them all alphabetized, and you've got special furniture designed to hold your CDs in, and the jewel cases and all of the above, and you put so much work into amassing this collection, and you're super proud of it, and you're used to enjoying it in one way and one way only, and then you realize all of a sudden that you can stream literally your entire collection from your phone for free, and you're just like, why am I lugging around cases full of compact discs everywhere? Like I used to be a DJ, like a club DJ. And when I was doing that stuff, I used to do so with like a bunch of records and CDs. Like I used to go, from...
Did you have crates? Did you have the crates, the milk crates of them or whatever they were called?
No, because I kind of like I would have a couple records here and there, but for the most part, I just use CDs. It is not the most authentic way of DJing. But most of the people that swore by vinyl, they immediately went to this thing once it became available called Serato, and I tried it a couple times. Serato is sort of this thing that basically it's like a MIDI controller shaped like a record.
I saw this. Yes.
Yeah. It basically plays back a wave or an MP3 or something, and then when you scratch the record, it's exactly like it's scratching a real record, but what it's doing is manipulating the CD or the file or whatever it is. It's unbelievable how much like using a real piece of vinyl it is, and you don't want to trash your vinyl collection by lugging it around. So if you are serious about vinyl, you tend to leave that home protected, and you take your Serato with you where you go. So I didn't walk around with crates of records. I had a couple of records, and then mostly I had CDs, but I had these books of compact discs that I would lug around with me, and it was just a crazy amount of work. And eventually I was just like, this is dumb. This is causing my back to cramp up. I'm going to try these MP3 things that I swore I would never do. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, look, I no longer have to worry that I left my livelihood in the cab as I was getting out of my, and I'd done that before. I had to chase down a taxi that I'd left my CD collection in, and that sucked because I was just like, oh my gosh, if I lose my collection of music, I lose my livelihood. It'll take me a while to get all that stuff back together. And I was known for spinning the songs that got the party started, my friend. So without that, where would I have been? Nowhere.
These are like such 1990s problems. It's hilarious.
Right. But you say they're 1990s problems, but when you say to somebody in 2018 that you like to read books on your phone, they're like, Philistine, Cad, Bounder.
It's so true, though. It's absolutely true.
That's not reading. That's playing on your phone. It's interesting. It's a new one. I called my sister out on this. Like the thing is, and I love this. I have sort of like an Amazon, and by the way, they're not paying me to say this, but I have an Amazon and an Audible subscription. So what you can do is you buy the ebook and then you're done reading, but you still want to find out what happens next. So you get into the car, and from the same point in the audiobook, it'll start reading it back to you.
Oh, wow.
Does that make sense? So the audiobook syncs with the e-reader, which is such a basic concept, but people still seem freaked out by it when I tell them. And that's great. But then, the hoity-toity side of you that goes, that's not reading, having a book on your phone. I know so many people that be like, oh man, yeah, I read this book. I'm like, did you read it? Well, I listened to the audiobook. Don't know if you can really count that as reading, and it's weird. People get this vague, snotty sense of intellectual superiority the way I did with my sister. My sister's like, oh, I got tons of audiobooks, so I like to read them. I'm like, but you're not reading them. You're listening to them on your commute. So don't try telling me that you read them. You weren't involved. You weren't diving in. You weren't using your imagination. What you were doing is distinctly more passive. And she was just like, give me a freaking break. I'm like, I will not. You're not reading them. I will not. Yeah. Holidays. They're super awesome good times with my family. I don't think you could call what you're doing reading. What could we call this that we're doing? I guess we're trying to figure out a better way to manipulate time so that we can get a better night of sleep. So hopefully you manage to take some of what we've talked about today, apply it, and get the hell over the $511 billion workplace. Help me, Travis. Help me.
Loss of productivity.
Thank you. Case in point, I need some sleep. I'm going to go try and get some. Goodbye.